Governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. There's your fusion of the Judeo-Christian value system and belief system with the Enlightenment, power checking power, the consent of the governed. The bureaucracy has nothing to do with the consent of the governed. Unelected judges who serve for life at the trial court level trying to devour the powers of the executive, that's not the consent of the governed. These were radical revolutionary ideas. My new book on power, if you haven't grabbed your copy, I want to encourage you to do it. We've mentioned that several times. You're aware of it. It's everywhere. The Costco's that have books have a big, nice, tall stack of this book. It's also in Sam Clubs. It's in BJ's. Barnes & Noble has a wonderful inventory of these books. Walmart does too. Any retailer that has books should have this book. Even Hudson at the airport I said, Hudson, they hate my guts. And there's my book. Maybe they don't know it's me. Anyway, it doesn't matter. And of course, Amazon.com. So let's get started. This is on rights, chapter 5. Remember, last week we hit chapter 6 on liberty because I thought I wanted to get into that. But let's talk about rights. I say in this chapter, I begin with the premise underscored by the Declaration of Independence that individual and human rights, liberty, and equality predate governments because they do not originate from governments. This part of the Declaration is key. We hold these truths to be self-evident that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, that to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. Those two sentences are so important. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal. Equal, human beings, equal. They don't mean in equal outcomes. They don't mean everybody has the same IQ or the same physique, have the same capabilities. Equal as human beings. You have unalienable rights. You have free will. You have liberty. Equal in that sense. We hold these truths to be self-evident that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator, the sovereign, God, with certain unalienable rights. That is the difference right there between Marxism and all the isms. They are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights. This is the Declaration of Independence from the Second Continental Congress, when the delegates from all the colonies came together to declare to the whole world what we were doing, what they were doing. Endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, meaning God is sovereign and God's children on earth are His sovereign children. They are endowed by God with certain unalienable rights. That among these are life, liberty, the pursuit of happiness. What does the pursuit of happiness mean? Free will. That to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. There's your fusion of the Judeo-Christian value system and belief system with the Enlightenment, power checking power, the consent of the governed. The bureaucracy has nothing to do with the consent of the governed. Unelected judges who serve for life at the trial court level, trying to devour the powers of the executive, that's not the consent of the governed. These were radical revolutionary ideas. And I write, the significance and magnitude of these two straightforward and concise sentences are impossible to overstate. Rights or moral truths are God-given through natural law and therefore are transcendent and universal. Through right reason, man discovers these truths and is innately aware of them. Thomas Jefferson, who authored the original draft of the Declaration, was certainly not alone in this view. It was the collective belief of the founders, including George Mason, the primary author of the Virginia Declaration of Rights, Benjamin Franklin, the primary author of the Pennsylvania Declaration of Rights, John Adams and Sam Adams, the primary authors of the Massachusetts Declaration of Rights. Section 1 of the Virginia Declaration of Rights, which predates the Declaration of Independence by a few weeks, June 12, 1776, states, this will sound similar, that all men are by nature equally free and independent, and have certain inherent rights, of which when they enter a state of society, they cannot by any compact deprive or divest their posterity, namely the enjoyment of life and liberty, with the means of acquiring and possessing property and pursuing and obtaining happiness and safety. See the overlay? It's very similar. As noted earlier, however, the 19th century philosophers who informed the Democrat Party, its progressive American Marxist ideologues, and their Western counterparts are, among others, Hegel and Marx. Of course, Woodrow Wilson's influence as a scholar and president was enormous. Their views were contemptuous of the foundational principles relied on in the Declaration that I just read to you, and the consensus view of the founders. Clearly, the basis for America's founding and the ideology of the American Marxists are utterly incompatible. Indeed, this is at the heart of the competition for governing power, or more accurately, the power struggle that exists today and has for 100 years or more, that is two opposite and irreconcilable worldviews about the individual and humanity itself competing for power. Page 107, that paragraph is key. There's no liberty without rights, and rights precede government. However, the societal effectuation and earthly manifestation of those rights are determined by power, negative or positive power. Out of societies, nations are established, some imposed, some with the consent of the people, some more spontaneous than others, some more gradual than others, some civil, some primitive, and so forth. Not all societies established governments, but all societies establish a hierarchy in one form or another, and in one way or another. In the civil society, the purpose is to secure and protect both the unalienable rights of the individual and those of the community of individuals who voluntarily come together for that purpose. That's John Locke. Just laws are adopted by the consent of the people, meaning a majority of the society's members. But the majority is to represent the best interests of the entire society. Although the civil society is distinct from government, the government is to reflect the purposes and character of the civil society. It is to safeguard it, and again, the unalienable rights of the individual in society, and I quote from Federalist 51, which I won't do right now. Madison is arguing, and he wrote Federalist 51, in support for the proposed Constitution's division of powers. And if you've been watching me and listening to me, even partially, over the course of the last several months, you know how important that is, the division of power.
For all this and much more, sign up for LevinTV.